What's up, degenerates? UFC Fight Night, Grasso versus Shevchenko 2. Starting off with the early prelims, we're going to do the full fight card. We got Josephine Knudsen versus Marnik Man. I'm going to go with Josephine Knudsen at minus 575. I know it's a high favorite, and with bad experience with high favorites, I mean, just look at Israel Adesanya. But at the same time, she's just so much better than Marnik Man. I feel like in this instance, like it's not like two high skilled athletes fighting. It's someone who's barely an athlete versus someone who actually has skill in fighting. So I'm gonna go with Josephine Knudsen dragging her nuts on Marnik Man's face. I don't see an argument in this one, so this is just a solid lock in my opinion. Next, we got Charlie Campbell versus Alex Reyes. Biggest thing to remember with this one is that Charlie Campbell is pretty active. He's fought a couple of times this year, and then Alex Reyes has not fought since 2017. So if you want to put your money on someone who has not fought in 6 years, God bless to you. Charlie Campbell all the way. This is a no-brainer for me. Next, we got Tracy Cortez versus Jasmine Jasudavicius. On some sports betting apps, I think Jasmine Jasudavicius can be an underdog, like plus like 105, something like that. But with this one, I'm probably gonna pass the fight. I don't really want to put my money on women's MMA when I feel both fighters are actually pretty equal. It seems like most betting companies are going with Tracy Cortez being the slight favorite, but to me, Jasudavicius looks stronger. She seems to be more aggressive. Um, Tracy Cortez, I think she only has one loss, and that was very early in her career. But at the same time, I don't know. I'm passing this fight, but I would go with Jasmine Jasudavicius. I feel like she's very brawlic, and I feel like in women's MMA, that is a factor that you kind of need to be a top contender. So I'm going to go with Jasmine Jasudavicius, slight underdog. Next, we got Edgar Chairez versus Daniel Lacerda. I'm Spanish and I can't even pronounce that. But I'm going to go with Edgar Chairez, minus 250. Lacerda, I think, is on a 0-4 in the UFC. So that's always a good sign. Chairez, I think he's actually a pretty good fighter. Not saying that he's going to be amazing or champion one day, but I think he definitely has a decent future in comparison to Lacerda. So I'm just going to go with Edgar Chairez. Not going to think too hard on this one. Not going to overcomplicate it. You know, you got a guy who's 0-4. It's not like baseball where they're bound to eventually win a game. Fighting's completely different. So I'm going to go with Edgar Chairez purely off of momentum, and also I think he just has better skill. Next, we got Roman Kopylov versus Josh Fremd. I think Josh Fremd has a good future, man, but at the same time, Roman Kopylov, I don't even know what he's doing on the prelims. That's the craziest thing to like wrap my head around is why the hell is this kid on the prelims? Amazing fighter, amazing striking. I would like to see him wrestle a little bit more, but at the same time, I think his striking is pretty impeccable, honestly. Minus 345, I feel like this is, I think it's a little high, honestly. I feel like anything really in MMA, like minus 300 is pretty high. But I don't see Fremd having any chance really in this fight. So I'm going to go Roman Kopylov, 100%, man. And I think he's going to be making us a lot of money in the future as well. So Kopylov, minus 345. And lastly, for the prelims, we got Lupi Godinez? I don't know, whatever. Versus Elise Reed. Godinez, there's a reason why she's minus 440. Reed is terrible. She doesn't look like she wants to fight, honestly. And Godinez, I don't know what it is about Mexicans, but Mexicans are probably one that like are the toughest human beings on this planet. I don't understand what they put in their milk in Mexico, but they're crazy. And Godinez is a great fighter. She's probably gonna be ranked one day. I can 100% see that. But yeah, I'm not gonna overcomplicate this one either. Am I gonna take her at minus 440? Yeah, I am. I'd probably grab her, and I'd probably grab Knudsen as well. Looking at the prelims, the ones that I definitely am going to go with are Godinez, Kopylov. Kopylov's my number one on this entire card probably, and I took Knutson as well. Going to the main card, we got Fernando Padilla versus Kyle Nelson. I'm gonna go with Padilla again. Going really riding all the Mexicans. Um, he's just better. He's just straight up better. There's many differences in terms of fighting style. Padilla is very dynamic, and I think he's just gonna absolutely outclass Kyle Nelson. This is the fight where I am less confident to actually put Padilla on a parlay. I feel like if any favorite were to lose, it'd either be co-main or main event. So obviously Shevchenko being the favorite or JDM being the favorite. Those are likely to happen, but I also think Padilla is also possible to lose. So I'm going to refrain from betting on Padilla. I do think on paper that he's a better fighter, but at the same time, I feel like there's more risk involved and there are better fighters to also put on your parlay that don't have the same amount of risk. And that kind of goes into my next point with the next fighter is Daniel Zellhuber. His odds aren't that much higher, but I feel like there's a stark difference in the matchmaking. And I think that you can get much more value for spending a little bit more money with Daniel Zellhuber than Fernando Padilla. Zellhuber has a promising future. I don't necessarily think Padilla has the same thing. So that's kind of where I'm looking at what's going to get me the best value for the picks that I take. And I definitely think taking Zellhuber is going to be worth the extra money than taking Padilla. And an example that I can kind of give talking about that is Jack Jenkins this past weekend. I had Jack Jenkins winning, and I thought he was doing very well in his fight. But then there was a random elbow dislocation that caused him to lose. It messed up a couple of my parlays. And I feel like I remember looking at that fight and thinking to myself, like, if one of the legs on this parlay were to miss, it's going to be Jack Jenkins. So I feel kind of the same way with Padilla, is that if there were to be a fight that messes up my parlay, it's going to be Padilla. So I'm going to go and spend a little bit more money for a little bit more security. And I think that Zellhuber fighting Giagos, I feel like that is a great matchup for me to take. And I really like that one. I just want to look at their records real quick. Zellhuber's 13-1. He's young, and Giagos is 20-10. There's a lot of film on him on how to beat this guy. I think you get a lot more from this, and he's got advantages when it comes to height and reach. Yeah, damn, it's a 5.5 reach advantage. I think Zellhuber's a nice parlay pick. So I'm going to go with Zellhuber at minus 285, 100%. Next, we got Raul Rosas Jr. versus Terrence Mitchell. The odds for this one were minus 700 for Raul Rosas. Don't take that. Again, perfect example would be Israel Adesanya. Oh, Israel Adesanya, lock, minus 650. How much more money were you really going to make if you put Israel Adesanya on your parlay? How much more money are you really going to make if you have Raul Rosas on your parlay? Nothing. So why take the risk? Terrence Mitchell, by no means, is going to win this fight, in my opinion, if I had to bet. But that doesn't say that he can't. And you never know with MMA. So when we're talking about betting, the biggest thing that you have to keep in mind is, where am I really going to get value? Because you can just load up on minus 300, minus 400 favorites, but if you never get enough value out of it, once it blows up in your face, that's when you start to lose money. So with this, avoid. I wouldn't even put money on Terrence Mitchell. I just avoid this fight entirely. There's so many factors. It's very possible. I have no idea if it's going to go under or over. Props, I feel like, are very scattered. Who the hell is Terrence Mitchell? We don't know. There's nothing on this guy that tells me that he's an amazing fighter. They're not telling me that he's absolute dog water. I think he is absolute dog water just in the fact that he has faced only people who have losing records, like 1-1 records, terrible, terrible fight cards. But at the same time, how much value are we really going to get out of Raul? Are you really willing to take that risk? So, avoiding this fight at all costs. For the co-main event, we got Kevin Holland versus Jack Della Maddalena. And initial feelings, I wanted to go with JDM because I think he's technically a better striker, but at the same time, he's also 4 inches shorter, and his reach is 8 inches shorter. And Kevin Holland, not saying he won that fight. I'm not saying he was even close to winning that fight against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, but he was competitive. He was 100% competitive. Jack Della Maddalena is way more well-rounded. With the height advantage as well, though, there is a power deficit. If you're a taller fighter and you're cutting down to 170, it's much harder to fill your frame with muscle because of the fact that you're so much more lengthened. Me being 6 feet tall, if I were to cut to 170, I'm going to have a lot more muscle on me than someone who has longer bones, like Kevin Holland, who's 6'3". So with JDM, the strength is going to be there. It's just a matter of, is he going to be able to get within range? And is he going to be able to get Kevin Holland to the floor? Because that's also another thing. JDM has great grappling, but we saw multiple times in his last fight how many mistakes he made. He kept jumping guillotine for no reason. Like, he wasn't getting it. He like, it got to the point where his coaches were screaming at him. And they were also the apex, so you could hear the coaches just screaming, like begging him to stop jumping guillotine, and he kept doing it. It's these mental mistakes that you think about, and you're like, dude, if you do that against Kevin Holland, I don't know if you see the end of the fight. So with this one, my safe pick, if I had to choose before the fight, I would probably go JDM just because he's more well-rounded. But I would like to do a live bet for this one because the way that you can look at it is, what kind of Kevin Holland are we getting? Are we going to get the Kevin Holland that's able to put people's lights out, who's a sniper from distance? Is he going to be holding JDM at bay? Or is he not going to have a good feel? Is he not going to be able to find his mark, cement himself, keep himself grounded, and jab JDM as much as he possibly can? If that's not the case, then I think that you go with JDM and you make a live bet. The odds might go up a little bit or down a little bit, however you look at it, but it's a lot more secure to look at it like that, having like one round in your pocket before you make a decision. Because that's also the other thing. You don't need to bet on every single fight. I want to bet on this fight, but I have no idea who's going to win. No one knows who's going to win because you got a 6'3" guy versus a 5'11" guy. Both are great strikers, but one's a little bit more well-rounded with a couple of disadvantages. So with this one, be smart. Be very smart with this fight. Don't try to push it. I would try to do a live bet. And then that leads me to the main event, Alexa Grasso, the champion, versus Valentina Shevchenko. Now, the ages I want to look at because Alexa Grasso is 30 years old. Valentina Shevchenko is 35. Now, with men, their prime is usually about 30 to 32. That's their prime. With women, it's even shorter. So their prime is usually like 25, 26, 27. She's 35. Now, am I saying that she's not an athlete? Absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying in the slightest. Valentina Shevchenko is an absolute athlete. But so is Alexa Grasso. And she might be a little bit past her prime, but this is probably the best Alexa Grasso that we've ever seen. And like Teddy Atlas once said, a fighter becomes 30% better immediately after becoming champion. Alexa Grasso upset the world. And now she's going to be on a card that's kind of designed around her, Mexicans. I mean, if you look at every single fight on this card, it's basically Mexicans, except for Holland and JDM. I think she gets it done here. Shevchenko doesn't really have any advantages in terms of physique. She's probably going to be the bigger fighter just in terms of muscle. But I feel like this is sort of the end of Valentina Shevchenko and the dominant run that she's had. Because once you factor in the fact that when I looked at that fight, factoring in how she looked, I was on my seat the whole time. And this is kind of where I learned not to take huge favorites. Because she was supposed to end her in the first or second round. And she got submitted. To get submitted in the UFC, there has to be a relatively high level difference between the two fighters. Or there's a huge mistake that one fighter makes. I don't necessarily think that Shevchenko made a mistake. I'll give you an example. Dustin Poirier versus Charles Oliveira. I don't think Charles Oliveira was eons away in terms of skill to Dustin Poirier, but he was still able to submit him because of a mistake that Dustin Poirier made. Or actually, it was the fact that Dustin Poirier wasn't able to get off his back because Charles Oliveira slipped a finger in his glove and submitted him. You could look at Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev. Who do you think has better Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Yet, Islam Makhachev was still able to get him into an arm triangle. So the fact that Alexa Grasso was able to get Valentina Shevchenko in a rear naked after reading her spinning leg kick, her roundhouse kick, getting in range, I mean, she won a couple of those rounds, man. Out of those 4 rounds, I think she won 2. I think it was 2-2 if that rear naked choke doesn't happen. And I think she's going to be better. You know, I think she's going to be better. It's been like 8 months, something like that, since they last fought. I feel like the longer you wait, the more Alexa Grasso has to gain from that. The older Shevchenko gets. A loss. And when you were that much of a favorite, man, I feel like it's hard to come back from. So I'm going to go with Alexa Grasso. I could be completely wrong, and this entire ramble might just be completely futile. But I'm going to take Alexa Grasso, plus 140. I think she's going to be very good. I think that the next fight is going to be Erin Blanchfield versus Alexa Grasso. Or that other French woman versus Erin Blanchfield, and then whoever she just beat. Who does she beat? She beat somebody. She beat someone on that Cyril Gane card. Rose Namajunas, the one who beat Rose. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Alexa Grasso. And so, what are my parlay gonna be? This is gonna be my parlay, plus 260. I think it's a good parlay. Last week, we were doing pretty well, and then Jack Jenkins kind of screwed that 5-pick parlay. But the most confident picks that I have, in my opinion, are going to be Zell Huber. It's going to be Lupi Godinez, Roman Kopylov, Charlie Campbell, and Josephine Knudsen. Lock of the night is going to be Roman Kopylov. And honestly, I would take Roman Kopylov and Daniel Zellhuber as one parlay. And then if you want a little bit more risk, I would take those 2 guys, and I would add Lupi Godinez. If you want a little bit more, take Edgar Chairez and Charlie Campbell. Again, Charlie Campbell fighting a guy who hasn't fought since 2017. It doesn't get that much more clear-cut. And Edgar Chairez versus a guy who's 0-4 in the UFC. It's hard to pass these kind of guys up. And so I've been going with a lot of favorites recently with the UFC just because I feel like the matchmaking has been pretty dog water. So I'm going to go with those. Let me know what you guys think. I'm going to show you the parlay that I have up, and if you want to copy it, you can copy it. If you want to meddle around with it, meddle around with it. Let me know what you guys think. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys. Hopefully everything works out, and I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya.